Okay. I hope you guys see my screen. Are you able to hear me? Hello, anyone?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so let us start with this one. So this is our today's first problem. Uh, it's minimum moves to move a box to its target location. So there is a storekeeper. This is a game in which a player pushes the box towards a in a warehouse, around in a warehouse, trying to get them to a target location. And the game is represented by grid of m by n, and each element is a wall, floor, or a box. So we have a basically we have a grid like this, and it will be of m by n size. So it might be a rectangle or a square, and then each and every cell in the grid is marked as either it can be a player, it can be a floor, it can be a wall. And so player is represented as x, floor is represented as dot, and wall is represented as hash. And there will be a box which is represented as b, and also a target cell. And the box can be moved in the adjacent free cells by standing next to the box and then moving in the direction of the box. And this is a push. So the player cannot walk through the box. So what we need to return is the minimum number of pushes to move the box to the target. And if there is no way to reach the target, then we should return -1. Okay, so if you look at this example, what they've shown here, and okay, let me see if I can annotate here. Okay, so this is the box, and this is the player. So now the player is standing over here. Okay, so as the example represents, so will have to bring the player and make him stand beside the box. And if he's standing on the right hand side of the box like this, okay, so he can move the box in this direction. Okay, so he can move the box to the left side. And so this will be one push. When he pushes like this from the previous cell to this cell, it will be one push. And then our objective is actually to reach this target. Okay, so we need to find how much minimum pushes are required so that we push this box to the target. Okay, so when if you look at it here, in this case, he was standing on the right side, and then in this diagram, he moved the box all the way, and he has just stopped here because there is a wall in front of it, so he cannot further push the box to the left side. So again, he goes all the way, and then he comes here, and he starts below the box in this diagram, and then now he's pushing the box so it will reach the target. So if you look at the moves, so he moved from this one cell, this was one move, and this was the second move, and this was the third move. Okay, so this is all about the problem statement. And if you look at the inputs, this is the m by n grid what we are given, and so these are all the representation of the box, wall, and everything, and the target, and and the player, and then we need to find. So, any ideas on what you guys think about how this can be solved, or just like brainstorming or thinking loud? What do you think it might be? Okay, so to me, it appears to be like if you look at the way I was discussing here and going through this example, so this box, the movement of this box, even though in this case it is restricted because the player was able to move the box from left to right, And then in this case, he did from, sorry, it was from right to left, and then he did from the bottom to the top. So it means that we can move the box in all the four directions as long as we don't have any obstructions like the wall, okay? Or if there is a box, because the player cannot move through the box, but player always has to stand beside the box in such a way that he can move to the opposite direction, okay? So he has a way and an option of moving the box in all the four directions as long as he is able to stay is yeah, he is able to be around the uh, in one direction of the box, okay? So he can push to the other direction, right? So if you see it, it can be done in four ways. So if you imagine this to be a graph problem, okay, so then we can actually push the box in all the four directions, right? And then so we actually push it in one level, and from there again, whatever the positions we are at, we can further explore and see if we can do some sort of a BFS traversal. So level by level we move unless we reach the target, because it seems to me to be like a shortest path algorithm. So I want to find the shortest path. So what is the shortest path? And so to find the shortest path, BFS is a good approach, right? But only in this thing, what we have to be very sure about the player's position. That is also important, because if you are given just a box, it would be very easy. Just look for whatever the current position of the box is and what other direction it can move, and then you start your BFS from there. But in this case, we always have to make the player stand beside the box in such a way which you want to, if you want to push the box in other direction, we have to make him stand on the opposite side of the box. Okay, so that is the only thing. If we are able to verify, then this will be a normal BFS, right? So actually, it seems to me like it's not only BFS, the movement of the box will be BFS, but the placement of the particular player at a particular location may involve a DFS sort of algorithm. Okay, so that is what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Or BFS, or maybe yeah, we can have BFS for the player movement also, right? Yeah, my bad, because I did it that way though.
Bidirectional BFS should also work, right?
No, I don't think so. At least the way I implemented wasn't a
Mhm.
bidirectional, because see, we have only single source, right? The bidirectional is only okay when it is okay. Are you saying that you start from the target as well as the box?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, okay, in that case, that won't be possible, because, see, if you look at this problem statement, we are not only concerned about the box position, we also have to keep in mind the player has to stand next to the box. Okay, so the player can be at any location initially. So, but the player has to stand at a particular location in order to push the box. Because imagine it's like a person pushing a box, right? So he has to push in one direction, he has to stand at the opposite direction of the box, right?
Yeah. True.
So therefore, we bidirectional BFS won't be possible because we cannot do anything with the target, right? Because even if we are able to place the player somewhere in the target, but I don't know we were allowed to move the target. Okay, so it's like always the box can be moved, but they didn't talk about the target though. But I might be wrong. There might be some implementation like that. You never know. Yeah, but for me it seems, if I think in a very high level, so I it seems to me it's the only box I can move, not the target. So it won't be a bidirectional for as per now, but at least the way I implement it. Okay, so it will be more of a single source BFS, and also the player's position. I'll keep on checking if the player is at the right position. Then only I will move my box, and so that also I'll do BFS. Okay,
Yeah. Mhm.
okay. So I'll just quickly run through my implementation, and it is almost the same in lines what I was talking about. Okay, I don't know why this is not. Okay, so this is the function signature, the min push box, and we are given a grid. So I'm just extracting what are the rows and columns in it, and so I'm actually going through uh, this whole grid. I try to extract the positions of the player. S is a player, okay, and then T is the target, what where I want to reach, and B is the box, okay. So the SR and SC are the row and column positions of my player, and the TR and TC are the positions of the target, and the BR and BC are the position of the box. So I just first extract all these values and I just store it here, and then actually I go. Okay, I'm using a visited array also, multi-dimensional array, a visited array, and so this is the queue what I'm using, and initially in the queue I'm pushing the current player's position, the row and column, as well as the box positions. Okay,
Mhm.
so I'm using the vector in such a way that I want to map the position of the player along with the position of the box. Okay, so I just want to mark those positions, and that is the reason I'm using a vector in a different way here, a visited vector. So if I start with my empty queue, okay, and now this is the BFS traversal, what I'm doing here, and then this is a level order traversal. Okay, so I just take whatever the size is and then run for all the elements in that particular queue at that level. Okay, so first what I do is I just take whatever the top values are, the front values are in the queue, and then assign for my player and my
Mhm.
and the box. So these are the ones what I were earlier stored in my queue. This first time I didn't pop it out, and then using these coordinates. So what I do is if my box is here, so I'm using a direction array. So the direction array is nothing but it's just a simple array of moving the box in all the four directions. So I'm adding 1 0 or 0 1 minus 1 0 0 0 minus 1. So it will move my position of the box in all the four directions. So that is what I'm using as a direction array. So whatever the current positions of my box are, I just convert them to the next positions. Okay. And
Mhm.
then when I'm doing this, okay, so I also want to see if my player is able to stand next to the box. So how can I get that? I use the box position, okay, and then subtract from the positions what I got from the direction array. So it is just to the previous position of the box what it was. Okay, so that is my new position of my the player. So this will be my new position. So I want my player to be at this position. Okay, so therefore I actually, so NB and NR, okay, are the new positions of my box which I want my box to go in that direction, and also NS and NSR and NSC are the new positions of the player, okay, where I want my player to be. Okay, so first I validate all these positions. If the positions are valid, if they are not actually going out of bounds and everything, and also I check if the value of both of these locations they are not a wall. Okay, if they're wall, then I continue. I just ignore them. Okay, so if I'm done with that, then I come here and I run this function to check if the new positions of my player, okay, and the current position of my player. So if my player is currently able to reach the new position, because if he's not able to reach, then it doesn't make sense to go in this direction, right? So this is the
Yeah.
first check I do. Okay, so we'll come to this function later. Okay, so this is just to check whether I'm able to bring my player from the current position to the new position. Okay, so if I'm able to do that, then it becomes very simple. I just go and again push the parameter what I'm looking for. Okay, so this will be my B1, and this will be the positions of my box and the new positions of the box. Okay, I just push that, in the queue, and again repeat the whole BFS. Okay, so this will be a simple level order traversal. Okay, so only the difference in this particular implementation is about looking for if the player is player can reach to the new positions where we want in the other direction which we want to push. So let's go to this implementation now. So this function is again using, so this is the grid, and this is SR and SE are the source positions of the player, or maybe the current positions of the player, and then PR and NPC are actually the new positions of the player. Okay, so and I also have my box positions because I don't want the player to cross the box. So in this case, I'm again using a BFS traversal. Okay, so I'm again using a queue. Okay, and then in the queue, I'm pushing the current positions of my player. Okay, and then I do the same thing. I pop the current positions and move in all the four directions. Okay, and then when I'm moving in four directions, I take these two values, and whatever the new values of my player positions, I try to validate them here. Okay, if everything is okay, and if I don't have any obstruction of a wall, okay, and if it's not already visited, then all these things are true, then actually I mark this position as true. Okay, and then I push that in my queue and again repeat this BFS traversal. And if I'm able to successfully meet the new positions, what are required positions of the player, so then I return true, or else at the end I come out of this whole loop when I have no nodes to traverse, then I return false. Okay, so here I'm also using a BFS, so it's two BFS what I'm using, but they are for a different purpose. It's not a like a multi-source BFS, but it's for two sources moving the same direction, right? It's a slightly different way of doing it. Yeah, so this was the implementation I found and to be easy to follow. So that's the reason.
Yeah.
Okay. So any questions? I know there might be better ways to implement also, but this was a easy way to understand, but it's a lengthy implementation. And if it's a BFS, so it's not so difficult also, right, to understand as well as implement.
Yeah. So I was going through bidirectional BFS, but I couldn't get much. Like I can
Okay.
share. Yeah.
Sure,
Like,
sure, no problem. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
let me share it. Okay, this is the normal BFS. What you shared, just same thing. I'll just walk it. Won't take much.
Sure.
Yeah, this is like rows and columns we are calculating and going through each of the cells of the matrix, right? Whenever you find a target, you just record its coordinate and whatever the B is for that, what do you say, block. So
Box. Yeah.
that box, yeah. So their target and this is for the person's target and taking, his coordinates and storing in all these variables. Now this is just like validating, like it shouldn't cross your row and column and there should not be a hurdle, right? Then it's a valid loop. And this is for just exploring in all the four directions. So for every time, whatever coordinates you get, you go in all the four directions and append this dx dy and check if it is valid, then it will go to here valid, and if it is valid, then it will return your X position. Now
Mm-hmm.
this module is for getting the box neighbors, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what all neighbors you can go from the box. So we pass the coordinate of it, ij, and then only two directions, right? Left, or you can go down. Yes, down, right? Be- because if obstacles are there, we can't go up at that point, right?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, is it the box neighbor? He's trying to check for the player position.
Mhm.
Okay.
Box, yeah. The
Mm-hmm.
one which you were doing minus of dx, right? There.
Right,
In,
right.
yeah, and
Right.
the same thing is doing. XY is calculating and pair px of parent and just passing all this into valid function to check they should be within the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the normal DFS. What is it? BFS we are doing. Push the current position and just a visited set you pop that coordinate, and if you find that you have reached the destination, you return true. Otherwise, you explore in all the four directions. Make sure that if it's already visited, and I mean, if it is not visited and this is not equal to your box, right? Then because if it is equal to box, that means you have reached the target. Then only you push it to your visited and up, pass it to the queue and go for the next one. Else you return false. And this is the second one, right? Like box and person, both we are choosing here. The coordinate of both the what do you say, box as well as the person.
Mm-hmm.
So this is that for that we are using this BFS, and a scene set we are maintaining and adding the coordinates of both of them and then putting it into our scene. Now, as long as your queue is not empty, you just get the size of it, and from queue you get both the box and the person's coordinate, right? And if you find that the box coordinate and target both are same, then you return the steps from there itself. Otherwise, for the new box and new person, it will go to the get box neighbor this function, and it will give return you the valid values, right? For this in the up and what is it? The two directions, left and this down. Yeah,
Right.
and just whatever new box position plus the current one, and if that is not in sync, and then we'll pass in our check function, which will have the person's coordinate, new person's coordinate, and the box coordinate, right? And if it is not seen, then you put it into scene and make it for the next call, and just add a level one, like for this for the given coordinate. One level you have processed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll set it last return minus one. So it's same like what you just use to BFS function for the normal.
Right. So this is a level order traversal for the box movement.
Mhm.
And whenever you are trying to do the box movements, you are trying to check if the player position can be matched in the direction of the box movement, right? So
Exactly.
that is
Yes.
what the check does, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah,
next is
makes sense.
yeah. This I was telling about regarding the bidirectional BFS.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this all the four directions here we are maintaining, and okay, let's start from here. So this traversing through same thing. This part what we are doing, going through the matrix and just first storing the coordinate of box. The what is this? S is your source person,
Player.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Player.
Mm-hmm.
Is what is his coordinate and what is the target coordinates. Now,
Mm-hmm.
once I got these, then we are running what do you say, the bidirectional. I mean, two sets we are using, right? One from source to the destination, other from whatever the current position you have, right? Hmm.
So this is box player, right? It's not a target, isn't it?
This is box. Wait, yeah. Hmm.
So you are
Okay.
actually trying to
Basic.
create a set for a scene
Basic.
and
Yeah.
current. That's the only thing we are doing here for a box and player.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's see what he talks about in.
But it's the same thing. I think same two stage. It's not bidirectional. I confuse it with this. Like from source to vertex, he's maintaining a set, and other is maintaining from destination towards the source. My bad. Like it's normal DL purpose,
Uh,
implemented in a different way.
different way. Okay, okay.
Like, right, my bad. I thought that
Yeah, no
it's
problem. Yeah. It's likely not so. Yeah, there might be. I'm not saying you can't find someone implementing in a different way for sure.
yeah.
But it's very hard to maybe comprehend also, to see if we a bi-directional BFS applies in this scenario because
Exactly.
the target seems to be fixed. And even
Hmm.
if we use a target, then how are we going to place the player? Because we have
I
two constants here, right? One is the player and the box. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think bidirectional can be possible.
Mhm.
So here, I mean, I mean, it should be similar to target as well. So when you're moving the box, you're just checking that uh, uh, whether it can be moved to the next position or not, and whether, I mean, in the same direction previous to the box, can the player be reached to that position, right?
Mhm.
But for the target, you just need to know. I mean, uh, so basically, uh, I mean, for the target to reach a particular position, it has to be pushed from the previous directions. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the 4 directions, and the player should have one more box previous to the box in the same direction.
Mhm.
So I mean, you may not do that whether player is reachable to that position or not, but I mean, you bidirectional BFS can be possible. Like saying, uh, uh, the target is here, and from which all directions I can reach the target. Uh, I mean, you will consider all 4 directions, as well as uh, in the same direction, you will check whether the previous box is empty or not.
Okay, so you are saying the box and player will always move together, and target will move together a separate way.
Yeah,
Is
target moves in a different. I mean, at least I am assuming that
Mhm.
it. I mean, uh,
Yeah, yeah. To some
because
extent, this is
yeah,
making sense. Yeah. Mhm. So you are just
yeah.
moving the
So
target in one direction, and then you are moving the box and the player together
yeah,
as a
box and the
second
source
source.
together. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe
player
that
together.
could be possible. But the only thing is, it might have a lot of things to take care of, some sort of bookkeeping. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it won't be direct.
it won't be that easy to implement, at least for me. Yeah, yeah. But that's a good way of thinking. I think, yeah. Then there might be some way to at least on a high level to understand. Okay, or maybe just discuss about this approach. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for bringing this up, Uday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just looking through the discussions, people using A star,
Yeah, I heard that is.
and also I think it's the Manhattan distance also, along with A star, right? Because A star will need Manhattan distance. So that might be one approach. And also people using Dijkstra. So I don't know why Dijkstra, but yeah,
Single source shortest path, like from a
yeah,
like you know, I saw that, but like
right, right. Really beautiful ways people think about it, right? Yeah. And also they came up with a very different idea. Yeah. That's super cool.
yeah. Then we can move to next.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you have anyone wants to discuss anything. Okay.
Okay. So we are given an integer n, and you have to return the number of structurally unique BSTs, which has exactly n nodes of the unique values from 1 to n. So for n equal to 3, these are the unique BSTs that you get. And yeah, so 5 such BSTs we are getting. For one, it's one only, and your constraints are like n will go from 1 to 90. Yeah, so this is more of a Catalan number approach, right? Like you go through each of the 1, 2, 3 is there. Every time you make, let's say, first time I made one is the root. So out of n nodes, so one node is consumed here. So n minus one will be left here. I mean, one node you will fix on this, and rest like n minus two nodes will be left on the right side. So whatever combinations we can obtain from here, and whatever combinations we obtain, we multiply them and do it for every time. Like now, if you make two as a node, then I will go here and I minus one will be left. Again, multiply all the possible combinations and add them, keep on adding, isn't it? Or
Right. Yeah. That is surely one way, but it will be very optimized way of doing it. So I was trying to think. Yeah. So the way you are representing,
Mhm.
and the same if we do it recursively, I think you are also doing it correct.
Because I'm just memoizing it, but without memo also it is passing. But let's say if constraints were very high, then because there is unique BST2, right? There without memoization it won't.
Right. Because the constants are very small in this case. They are only 19. So we can just use recursion, isn't it?
Yeah,
So what we do is we actually assume that each and every value will be a root. Okay. And then we break down into two subtrees, the left and right subtree, and then keep on recursively calculate how many ways a subtree can be formed, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And then we multiply the ways the left subtree will be formed and the right subtree will be formed, and that will be your value for that particular root.
and do it for every route. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you traverse the sort of array or maybe all the numbers one by one and do the same for all of them and then return the value, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that is more intuitive for me at least. But yeah, people use the Catalan number way, and that is also not a bad idea. But this seems to be okay,
Yeah,
even
this
though
is
there is more implementation.
yours approach only. Like every I mean, like any tree, right? So every number I'll treat as a root. So if I treat that number as a root, so what will happen? On the left will be I, on the right will be what? N minus I minus 1. Because this one I'm subtracting because that will be taken by the root, right? So on the right side, you will be left with n minus the whatever number of nodes on the left and the root. So these many root, what you said, nodes will be on the right side, and you pass it in both the calls. So this will give you the total number of possibilities of generating the trees, and you just put it into account. And for that particular end, you restore your value in the memo table.
Correct. So what you're
Mhm.
trying to do on line number 11 is you're trying to go through all the numbers
Mm.
uh, as per our input n, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then whenever you take one number, you try to divide them into two subtrees, right? That is what the helper function does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and then they go recursively and again they further subdivide. Okay, and then you take care with the base cases. Okay, yeah, that this makes perfectly sense.
And just memoizing it as
Yeah,
well.
you're
But even
using
without it will work.
the caching also, yeah.
Yeah.
So this will be at least a normal way to come up with, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you can do an iterative way also. So then it is good. But now if you look at it, everything boils down to only the numbers. So you don't even have to store everything the way we are doing caching and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then we can use something like that Catalan number, right?
Exactly. So this formula is I think following Catalan number only, line number 12. Catalan
Okay.
is equal to n upon n plus 1, right? If we evaluate this, it
Uh-huh.
will this will be equal to 2 and cn upon n plus 1. The value of that.
Yeah, because actually it is also breaking down into two subtrees, sort of.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right, right. Hmm. Okay, but the way I was trying to do is, I take an I and then I take the start and end and then break start to I minus one and I plus one to end, something like that. But yeah, so then it can be made more generic the way you are doing it. Okay,
Mhm.
and then that can be converted to the Catalan way, Catalan number implementation, right? Yeah. So that one way we can evolve and make it more optimized. Yeah, I agree.
Optimizing.
Yeah. This
You
is
want to
good. No,
yeah.
that is fine. Actually, this is almost the same what you're doing here.
Mhm.
Nothing different.
So
If you want, I can go through, but yeah,
yeah,
mine is a big code. No
oh,
problem. Let me go through it. If no
if-
one has any questions, right?
yeah, if anyone has any questions or anyone wants to share anything, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I'll just quickly run through this one.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So this is the one what I was talking about. There is more implementation though, but let me run through that. So, okay. So this is the function what I'm calling. So this is my main function. Okay, I'm using a map also for history where I'm storing with a pair. We can come to that later. Okay, so I'm just using a map where I'm storing the pair, and it's for memoization. And then I'm saying, okay, my start will be one, and my end will be n. Okay, so this is the get tree num range, which is the recursive call, and then I'll go there. So this is what it is. So I'm saying this is my start now. It was set to one in the first call as well as end was n. So then I look if my start is greater than n, then I return one. So this is the base case for my recursion. And then I traverse the whole of these numbers from start to end, okay, inclusive. And then when I'm doing that, then I break it down into two pairs, left pair and the right pair. Okay, so I just take start and I minus one and I plus one and end. Okay, so I'm just keeping I as a root, and therefore I can break down into the left subtree and the right subtree. And even if you ignore this part for now, because this is more of caching. So here actually it comes and then it gets whatever the numbers will be for my left side, left subtree. And then again, I'm storing back in the cache here. And again, if you ignore this part, so if you come here, so this same thing I'm doing for from I plus 1 to n, that is for my right subtree, right? So whenever I got this number, so at the end, actually, I just multiply both this left and right subtree number and assign it to value count, okay, which is outside this for loop. And then I keep on doing it for each and every number. Okay, so I'm assuming that each and every number will be a root, and then I'm for dividing the rest of the elements into left subtree and right subtree, and they are again calling their same recursive call. Okay, and then they're getting the left number and right number. Okay, so this is exactly the way you have done, but if you look at my code has I have too much of implementation, and if it is already cached, I'm trying to return it. So sort of memoization. Okay, I
Yeah.
just return the right and left subtree. I don't have to calculate. So, but then when we go ahead and then as the way you did, we can actually go there, like instead of start to I minus 1 and I plus 1 to end. So then if we go there, then actually I think this is a way of to do a Catalan number implementation, right? So I'm using a vector, and then this is my another vector where I'm storing all the values initially to 0, and it is n plus 1, and these are my base cases for 0 and 1. They will be all 1 1, because if there is an empty subtree, I will at least have one way to do it, and if I have only one number, so at least I will have one way to do it, right? So if I
Yeah.
have this, then I go through this loop which starts from 2 to n, okay, and then when I'm doing this I, so I'll have to go from 1 to I. Okay, so I'll calculate how much ways I can do for a particular location. So that is the way we are breaking it down over here in the previous and your implementation. So yeah, specifically it makes more sense to your implementation in this case, because I'm taking j minus 1 and whatever is remaining, I'm putting it to the other part of the tree. And so whatever the values I get, I just multiply and store it in this current uh, position. Okay, but I do for all the positions of everyone till I reach my I, from 1 to I. So I in first is always 2, but it will keep on increasing, right? So that is the reason I have to do for each and every number and then get that value. So at the end, so my results will be stored in the very last location of this G, right? So I think this
Yeah.
is some sort of the Catalan way to implement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, getting this is very difficult. So, but after this, the way you did, I think that makes more sense. And then come to this one, right? Yeah.
So the time complexity here will be open because after all, you are evaluating just a constant formula, right? Which is your 2n Cn upon n plus 1. So for calculating this factorial, you just put the value of n. So this will be order of n, right? For every node you are calculating, I mean, this value you are calculating. So time complexity should be open for this, right?
So, are you trying to say that we can actually make this constant?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Then, yeah, sure, that will be possible. I didn't try it that way though, but yeah, because this
I,
is not, this implementation is not open. It's not
yeah.
linear.
Mhm.
Okay.
It will
So,
be
yeah,
T of,
that will be a good way to implement, but I don't have that unfortunately.
no, I was just going through somewhere.
Okay.
Share it to you.
Yeah, you can share that, no issue.
So like using, yeah, just what is it? So if you directly use the Catalan, this is the formula for this Catalan number. I mean, he is expressed in some other. But if you look, this is like what do you say? O of n, it will take you to evaluate all the factorial, and the space complexity will be that. But if you go by the recursion route, then like T of n will be what? One node on this side. I mean, t what like t of I into t of n minus I n minus 1 minus I, right?
Yeah, so these, if we cache, it will be n square, correct?
N square, yeah. If
Yeah,
you can.
those that will be a time complexity n square, but the way you are the time complexity of O of n, the way you explain, okay, that would be O of n. But all
Yeah,
my implementation as well as your implementations are all n square,
yeah, that's true.
right? Yeah, and also we are consuming space, which is almost O of n in both the cases,
Yes,
in all the
yeah.
three cases, right?
Yeah. So with the, I mean, if you memorize it, n square. Otherwise, if you don't memorize, it will go to 2 raised to power n every time.
Yeah, that will be exponential. That will be surely exponential, but we have cached it, therefore it is going to be n square. But this, the one what you are showing here, will be a linear
Constant.
time complexity, and space will be constant, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so is it possible to see this implementation?
Yeah, this is the implementation. Directly is substituting value in the formula. This one. This formula he has taken, right?
Okay.
And fact just he has put it here. I mean, factorial function we have to write separately. So factorial will take off and right.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
So,
So at the end, if we just take n and then just substitute this formula,
Hmm.
okay. So this is about the combination formula, correct?
Yeah.
So, but then why 2n? Because we are having two subtrees. Okay,
No,
no, sorry, yeah, NC2, right, problem. Okay,
NC2.
okay, yeah.
There is a derivation also in this, but it will take time. We can check it next time. Yeah, this from here is out
Yeah.
of what 1 cn, out of 2 n objects, n objects is choosing, right?
Mm.
Sequence of natural, I think, I don't remember exactly. So from after deriving is coming up something like this. You can look for the proof. Yeah, I'm not sure now like why. 2n why n plus 1 is doing this we can get out of, I mean out of 2 n objects, n objects is selecting. But why is it dividing by n plus 1?
Well, there is a way to prove this, right? So that will be more complex to go
From
through, I would say, right? Yeah, we had a session, I know. I don't recollect how it is. If anyone has any inputs, please share. Yeah.
yeah,
For me, I'm not able to recall actually why it is all that stuff. But yeah, surely we had one and we need to refresh it again.
exactly. Yeah, we'll check it. If anyone else, share it in the Discord or anytime we can take it. No problem. Okay, then we can move to next if no questions.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Let's move if no one has anything to say
Yeah.
on this
So
one.
you're like, yeah, adding two numbers. So two non-empty linked list is given, and digits are stored in a reverse order, and each of the nodes contain a single digit. You have to add the numbers and return the sum as a linked list. Like your original number is 342, but they are stored in a reverse fashion, like 243,
Mhm.
and 465 is in 564. So if you just add them, so like this is again what is it? 4 plus 3, 7, 6 plus 4, 10, and 2 plus 1, 3, 5, 8. So you add them and again reverse it and then return it in the original way. Like this result should we should get like this. No, no,
Right.
this one. This is the proper.
Yeah. Yeah, both the same, but actually explaining it how it is done.
Yeah.
But output will be 708.
Hmm. Output will be 0.
Yeah. So explanation is they are taking the same way what is being represented there, the way we traverse. Is it not? Or no? Oh, I'm
No,
sorry. The actually the explanation is the way it has the numbers will be.
in the correct format.
The real numbers will be. Okay, my bad. Yeah.
Now they have made it opposite in the list, and then the result they have given according to the list: 5 plus 2, 7, 6, 4, 10, and 3, 1, 4, 4, 8.
Yeah. So one thing they have given us the list in a reverse way, so it is good, right? If had
Otherwise, yeah,
it been in the other way, we would have to reverse the list and then actually do this.
other persons.
right? Because always we'll have to start from the one which is the lowest unit. That is the way the addition will be a better way to do, right?
Yeah.
Because we'll have to carry forward any number which we is an overflow. So that makes more sense. Okay.
So here then like normal addition, right? Like we can keep some kind of carry variable, right? And we'll check whether there is a node exists for it or not. If node exists, I'll add both of them, right? 3 plus 4, 7. And I'll take mod of this with 10. So whatever comes, whatever the remainder is, I'll store here, and I mean here it's 7 only, and you won't get any carry. So you will move here. Again, we'll check if these two nodes exist. So 6 plus 4, 10, and 10 mod 10 will do. So 10 mod 10 is 0, and 1 will be passed here. And again, we'll check whether these two exist. Here 2 plus 5, 7, 7 plus 1.
Yeah, you have to do it the other way, but that's fine. So you are saying you're traversing instead of 3, 4, 2, you start from 2, right? Because that is the starting point. Yeah, so no problem. So 2 plus 5 you add, then you get 7, right? And when you do that, you take the mod, right? The modulo of 2 plus 5, and that you assign it to 7. That will be 7. But if there is an overflow, for that you will have to say 2 plus 5 divided by 10.
10.
Yeah, and then that will be an overflow, that will be a carry, which will be carried to the next nodes. So then you increment both the nodes, right?
I did in a
Yeah,
reverse.
that's okay. So, but only thing what we need to check in this case, because the example shows both the lists are of the same sizes, but if they are uneven sizes,
Yeah, that's why
right?
every time we'll check whether both of the node exist or not. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So to make sure that even if there is an event, then we'll take for other the for we won't take any value for the other. Only the first value we'll take and copy to the rest.
Right. So that's the only thing we have to be very careful about. And
Exactly.
then when we do it, then it becomes a very simple addition. When we add it, we take a modulo and assign it to the nodes value, or we take it forward with the carry. Yeah, but whenever we are adding two nodes values, we also have to take the carry and add it along with them if the carry is not 0.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And then
In
keep on
interview,
linearly.
they can skip this in interview because here we are used to this reverse order. So we'll have
Oh,
to take care of that, you know.
and then we'll have to reverse and return it back also, no?
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
No, we don't have to reverse it. We just have to return the string, isn't it?
No, no, I'm saying in interview, if they skip that, like your original listing is not in a reverse, then we have to
Oh,
reverse.
yeah, this
Because
will be a clarifying question with the interviewer, right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, in some cases, he's more interested in each and everything. So he will say it's not reversed, then we'll have to reverse it.
Exactly.
So, but that is also not so difficult. We can have a function saying we just put in any list and then get the reverse of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's also possible.
Yeah,
Reverse
but
function we already know only, right? So it's like an API, you can say.
yeah, it's not so straightforward. Yeah, but we'll have to implement that. Yeah, that's
Mm.
right. Okay.
Yeah, so as statement, mm, yeah. So as discussed, like I'm just creating a dummy node and assigning a pointer to this dummy node, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
the carry function. Now, as long as my list one exists or list two exists or there is a carry,
Mm-hmm.
so I'll perform this operation. So what I'm doing, this just to check sure that that particular linked list has a valid node. I mean, there is a node or not. So if there is a node to the carry, I'm taking its value and I'm increasing my pointer in that particular node. Again for L2, same thing. We'll take its value, add it to the carry, and then increase the pointer in that. Right.
Okay.
Now L3 is the node pointer on this list node. So whatever value I get, carry mod and remainder, I'll be putting here the remainder in this. And this, what is it? The carry will be the whatever part is overflow that you divide it and store it back to the carry. I'm not taking extra two variables like carry and the carry itself is functioning both the things.
Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And this is like so like let's say we did these two additions 3 plus 4 we got like this from here 2 plus 5 7 we got. Now for the next node, we have to create it, right? Because where we store 6 plus 4, 10. So for that, what I'm checking whether there is further list 1, list 2 or carry. If it is, then I'll create a, because L3 is pointing currently to the list node, right? Uh, I mean, the list node 7 you put and list node is here. Now I'll check whether these two exist in this line. And if it exists, I'll create a new node. I mean, I'll fill it with 0 initially and append it like this. Here is your L3. And again, we'll carry this process. 4 plus 6 is 10. So L3 dot val. Now L3 we have moved up to here. L3 dot val will be 10 mod 10. 0 will be here and carry will continue. And again, we'll come here and check whether these two exist. If it exists, we'll again create a what you say box, node, and move L3 here and put the what is it, the value, whatever value of the carry is, and just your dummy node is always pointing to this, so you return the dummy node.
Okay, so you are using the dummy node that is L3 and then you are written. Okay, that makes sense. That is an easier way to do also because it's more cleaner code to implement. Yeah, I agree.
Kind of both there is salary or max of the length of it should be whosoever length is maximum. Time complexity. Max of L1 and L2. Right.
Yeah, the time complexity will be the max of either of them, and yeah, that's the one it has to be. Makes sense.
So, any other approach? Anyone?
Well, I can show mine because see, if you look at your line number 11, so you are doing an optimized way. It's like L1 or L2 or carry.
In all the
all of them you are doing in the same thing. That's a very good way of doing it. But I did a very naive way. It's like
in which
I'm
carry
not sorry.
Carry and add, we are taking two separate variables.
Oh no, I also did almost the same thing. Okay. My bad, yeah. No problem. So that is also almost similar, but it's more code. Yeah.
You want to go through?
Okay, I can go through that also.
Sure.
Not a, okay, I thought it, but it is okay. So to some extent, it is slightly similar to yours. Uh, so this is the function signature. What we have, add two numbers. We have these two nodes. Initially checking the base conditions. If L1 is null, I return L2, and this one L2 is null, return L1. And this is the head and current. I'm just setting them to null, and I think I will. Oh, sorry. Let me come to that later. But let me go to the normal one, which is the non-iterative version. Okay. Did I come back here again? Okay, yeah. So this is the one I think I was talking about, wherein I am not doing the way you did the optimized version. Okay. So yeah, so this is the one. So I'm having a head and then current. So yeah, so the first while loop, I'm just checking with where my both L1 and L2 are not null. So that's an AND condition. Okay, and then I take the values of L1, L2 and the carry initially initialized to 0. Then I sum it up and then assign carry. And then whatever is the remaining with modulo 10, I create a new node. Okay, and then if my current is null, then I'm assigning the current to this new node, whatever this new node is, and the head I'm assigning to current. Or else, then I will just make my current next pointing to the new node, and then the current will actually move to the new node, what I've done. And then I will keep on incrementing my L1 and L2. So in your case, you did everything in your one while loop, correct?
Yeah.
So that is more efficient way of doing it. But this is slightly more coding because then we come out, then we'll have to check whether my L1 was empty or not.
Anything left.
Right. Yeah. So the same implementation what I did earlier, I'll have to do, but this will be just for L1. Okay, because I'll always have a carry which has been there for the previous operation. So same thing again, I'll have to repeat for L2 also, right? And then because I'll have to again take care of the carry also if the carry was previously assigned a value. Then when I'm done with L1, L2, and then again I'll have to look if my carry is still not um, has some value and it's greater than zero. And then again I'll have to do some more things, create one node for that, and then assign to whatever was remaining, and then at the end you return. So I've been doing 3 while loops, okay, but in your case you did everything in single while loop. And also implementation wise in an interview it makes more sense to do that route because it's very easy and less code also, right?
Maybe because
Actually, Santosh, one question here. So instead of doing after first while loop, right, you are doing again L1 not null, L2 not null, right? Instead of that one, right? Initially, we can find the length of the each arrays, which one is greater, right? We just uh, add only those two. Which one is greater, then we can just append those things to the end of the result, right?
but unnecessary you are making first pass you will make to calculate the length and again make second pass to add the values, right? So he's avoiding
But
that.
But that
in
is
this
also
approach,
one way of doing it, right?
Yeah,
So
it's a
you
way
can
of
do
doing
it,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, but passes will be more, right? He's
Uh-huh.
see L1 what he's doing, he has covered this portion, right? Now let's say other he I mean first list got over at this point. So now he's checking whether L2 is left or not. So he's not covering two times. But what Srinu is telling, like first you get the length of this list, the length of this list, and whichever is max, then you keep on adding till the something like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that will be one. There are many ways to do it. Absolutely, yeah, that right. So, so that might be one way of doing it. But as Shashank says, there might be uh, you know, uh, some more computations to be done, right? Like
Mm.
you are actually, traversing the whole list and doing nothing, just finding its length, right? So that
Yeah.
will be an additional pass. So then in the interview, someone will ask you to optimize on that again, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that is the reason he came up with a more optimized version. Yeah, but mine is might be slightly in between Srinu's code and then
Yeah.
Shashank's code, right? Yeah.
C plus plus also there. That's why also it might have taken more lines. Mine is Python, so
Right,
because
right, yeah, yeah. That is okay. So now, okay, I have the similar way what you also did,
yeah,
but
you
still
are.
it is more. Yeah.
Mm.
So here actually I'm good doing the way. Okay. So, but then I'm actually taking these values here, and then I'll have to look for this condition if L1 is null or L2 is null, these two conditions, and then similarly do. At the end, I'll still have to be careful to check if my carry is not zero.
Mm.
Okay, so this is one implementation. And another way what to do was using a recursion.
Oh, that will be more challenging.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it's really efficient way of doing it or no. But I think someone did it some time back. So I'm just trying to use that implementation. So it's like you are adding two numbers. Okay, so these are the two lists. So this is the initial checks what we do, and then I start with the helper function, which is the recursive call. I pass my L1 and L2, and this is the zero because the current value is sum is zero. So that I pass from here, and then the recursion call comes here, and when the recursion call when we look for if so we do the same thing again the recursion also just
Mhm.
find out what the L1 value will be, L2 value will be, and then just have the sum. But before that, also we check if my sum is less than zero, and if my L1 and L2 all are null, then I return null. Okay, so this is a base case. Okay, if it is not, then we go in this, and then if my L1 is not null, okay, then I'll assign whatever the sum what I had to L1's value, and then my because I'm actually traversing ahead because this is the node what I'm having. Okay, so this node actually will catch up with the L1. If if else if I have an L2, okay, so then I do it this way. Okay, I assign all the values to be L2, and then my move my node, and my it now currently is pointing to L2. Or else if I don't have any of them, okay, because my I'm biased towards the L1, therefore I do L1 because I don't want to create any node, okay, and I just want to use the nodes which I have, right? So, but only for the carry, I'll be creating one more.
No, yeah.
Yeah, or else then I do something like this, that whatever is my this node, whatever I got over here, its next value will be pointing to my helper function, and the helper function will move both of these lists, okay, because in each and every helper, each and every recursion call, I'm just adding single nodes at a time, right?
Yeah.
So then I just want to move L1 and L2, and at the same time also divide my send only the carry part of my sum, okay, to the previous to the next recursion call. So that will take care of the next two nodes of those two linked lists, right? So at the end, I will return my end node, right?
Yeah.
Slightly not so
Okay.
easy, but because in this particular implementation, at least I would always prefer to go the iterative way, okay? But this is one way, the recursive way it can be done. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So any questions? Okay. Oh, what is the time complexity? Oh, I'm so sorry, I did forget about that. So in this case, as you said, it will be a max of length of the both strings, right? Either of the strings. Yeah.
No, that was for the first question. I mean,
Yeah. So
first,
yeah, we forgot for all of them. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So the first one, if it was a BFS way, so now what will be the time complexity in that case? Because we have grids, correct, and then we keep on going in a BFS. So we are going to the to each and every location. So is it not going to be m into n,
hence,
or
four on all the four directions, four raised to the power mn, right? Or
because we are using a visited array also, we won't go to the same locations over and over again, but we means in the implementation what I was going through, it was also taking care of that player's position, so that was another addition. So
oh,
that
it's
was another m into n. So maybe n
rows
square into n
into
square.
it rows into calls whole square. M
Yeah,
into n whole
maybe.
square because two BFS calls you are making, right, for mn.
Yeah, it seems like that. Uh,
They have mentioned like this only rows into columns square.
yeah, but that was yeah, a bit more. It was more intense also, right? Because you're doing checking all of that, and it's not an easy BFS problem.
No, no. Like
Yeah, because you don't get your answer in the first shot. You need to keep on doing a lot of other stuff. So it's not a straightforward problem also, even though it looks like, because with the way you use a visited array, because you're trying to keep a map of your player and the box, right? So it's a slightly different way of keeping a track on the visited locations, isn't it? Because your player can be at any position. So you cannot say if my box is visited, then it is done. It's not that way. You'll also have to take into account your player's position with the box, because you want you to move the box in all the four directions, even though you're at the same position. So you cannot mark that position visited till you are done with all the four positions. Right. So
yeah,
that is a different way to actually, and it takes some time to get to some those implementations, details on how you would like to implement the visited, right? Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So we don't have any questions. No problem. So then I
You
think,
can
yeah,
try.
Uday came for that particular moment and he explained about that the multi-source BFS. Yeah, and that made more sense. So thanks for that too.
Yeah, he has gone.
Yeah, that was a good one. Okay, let me stop the recording.